right, good morning, everyone. My name is Cynara McQuillan. I'm a professor here at Touro Law Center, and I'm looking forward to present our esteemed panelists on the International Perspectives panel. This panel will bring an international lens to disability inclusion. Our first panelist, Evelyn, is a postdoctoral researcher in educational sciences, specializing in special education at the University of Eastern Finland. Her multidisciplinary research aims to bridge the gap between policy and practice across various disciplines, including vocational and special education. Please, Evelyn, thank you so much.
Thank you for a very nice introduction. And thank you, Professor Levine, for this invitation. I'm so privileged to be here because the issue of inclusion is very dear to my heart. And I've been working in a lot of countries, especially the global south, Europe, and also in the United States. So it will be interesting to share the experiences. I might not use the slides, but of course, at some point we can also, because you share the slide to them. So I really want to talk freely and then to share the experience in terms of inclusion and disability rights across the globe and the countries that I have been working with. First, as I think that most of us are legal experts, and then let's say if a child enters a classroom and a teacher understand how they learn and how to support the teacher and whether the support also comes early or they get the support that they need. Because we often say that inclusion is human right. But when a child enters a classroom and teacher understand how they learn and they're able to also get the support they need. And we also are able to build the system that is able to adapt to the child's needs, but not the system that we expect that the child should adapt to the system. Then what do we do if the system, the children is supposed to adapt to the system? And if we are not able to build a system that can adapt to the child's needs, then what do we do? Are we ensuring, and as legal experts, what are the policies that we are trying to mechanisms to ensure that this right is implemented in some of the schools? I am very much concerned about this. I first talk about the Scandinavian model. I can use the model from Finland because I am originally from Ghana, but I live in Finland almost 15 years. I studied there, I worked there, I also traveled to most of the African countries and also in Asia, China, Hong Kong, Japan, and then most of the African countries, even in Europe. I've witnessed a lot of inclusion. The concept of inclusion is it's ambiguous and it's even misunderstood in many contexts. We were in Uganda 2023, we were supporting the Uganda government to design their curriculum in teacher professional development in the education system. I went with a senior professor from Finland, Professor Niemi, and then after she spoke, I also have to talk about disability rights inclusion. We realized that when we talk of inclusion, the understanding is only disability inclusion. So I needed time to explain to them what is inclusion. Inclusion means, when we talk of inclusive education, making sure that each and every child has the right to quality education. It's not only for disability, people with disability. People from poor background, people from various religious communities, people because of, they even have dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, they all have learning difficulties. What are the systems doing to ensure that all these people have the right to quality education? Yesterday, I learned from the conference a lot of things. I did a lot of reflection last night, and I realized that in the United States, if a child or a student has disability, you need a lawyer to help the child get a right the right to support. But if you look at it from Scandinavian perspective, I will take you to Finland. I've been working in the University of Oslo, in the Denmark, and Sweden, but I live in Finland. Their system is early support, early intervention. So the support is given right from the childhood. In Finland, we don't even use the word disability. It's not the support system. That is what they have. So it's from early childhood education, from the basic education, from early childhood, from the basic to the higher education to the university. Because their education is free, and then mostly the right of the disability right is embedded in the educational system. It's not a separate entity that you need. So we have this multi-professional team that from day one, while you are in daycare, they do the assessment. If the child needs support, the support is provided. We even have some of the vocational schools in Finland also have inclusive vocational school. That is where we have schools that has students with disability. In the state, you can say high density. I did a study with University of Chicago, Illinois. We were doing a comparative study on the professional special ed teachers. We're using at the Chicago State and we're also in Finland. Of course, Finland is a small country. I moved to Finland 2012. And then when I went there, I heard that the population is 5 million. And it's still 5.5 after 14 years. So you cannot compare Finland to the state. But I think that there are some of the models that can be also replicated in some of the states in the US, like the early intervention and the support system. So this is something that I really want to talk about. And then the whole school approach system. When we talk of the whole school approach, we look at it from the perspective of it's a welfare state. Those countries, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Iceland, they are it's a social welfare state. So most of the country's budget go into education. So they make sure that from the early childhood, like I said, child is support. They have 3-tier support system. The basic support system, the intermediate, and then the high-level support system. That is the third one. The basic support is every child has the right to education, irrespective of who you are, where you are from, you get the support. Once, my son, I have 2 boys. The first one, I think when he was 2nd or 3rd grade, the teacher said that his handwriting was not good. So in this case, they needed to organize some classes for him from the school. We had a meeting, we agreed, and then this thing was done because they have this multi-professional team, which has a psychologist, a medical doctor, the parent, the student, the child himself, and then the special needs teacher. So we had a meeting and we agreed that, okay, this is what they have to do. And they did that for 1 academic year. And after that, there was no support again. He's in grade 5 now. He's not receiving it. They realized that everything is okay. So the early intervention worked. Imagine if we had waited or we didn't do anything about it. I'm sure by now it would have been another issue. So that is the work of the early intervention. And then I also want to take you to Ireland. Last year I was in Ireland, and then I am more interested in the concept of inclusion. So I'm just looking at every context when I travel, and I ask about the support system. When support systems are good, it also supports inclusion. Inclusion we are talking about is support, making sure that everybody gets the right support, irrespective of who you are, what kind of disability you have. And it was also an eye-opener for me to see that, yes, they have the support system. There's also issue of segregation is still there. And also, you can apply for support, but it takes some time. Like a similar system in Norway. Because in Norway, when a child needs support, when you do apply, that you need sometimes it takes like a year. Unlike the Finnish system. Finnish system is like you get it as soon as, it's very, because they have made, even last year there was a policy review, that is 1st August, it started in the basic school. They are still strengthening their support system again. And this year they are, in 1st August 2026, is being extended to the vocational schools. So that is also what, so it's also a similar thing in Hong Kong, in issue of segregation. And then yesterday, one speaker mentioned about the China. When they went there to adopt, he saw what, I also had experience in China. I was working there, and after I gave a speech, and one professor came to me and said that he would love that we do a collaboration. And I said, yes, I am interested in this collaboration, because some parents are living there because they have children who have disabled or disability, and the community is, because of that, they cannot stay there. They need to travel out of the country to look for a place to keep them. And in fact, I was a bit, it was shocking. If you take this to Africa, when you have a child who has a disability, it's a cultural issue. Yesterday, somebody spoke about looking into somebody's eye. As we know that in special ed, it's a trait, autistic trait. But in an African culture, if you are talking to elderly, you can't look their eyes straight. So if a child travels from, let's say, Ghana, and then he's in Finland, and you happen to find yourself in a classroom, you are talking to your teacher, and you don't look at their face, and you look outside, the probability of getting misdiagnosed is very high, because they might think that you are autistic, you have an autistic trait, but it's your culture. That is how the African are trained. If you are talking to elderly, you cannot look their face in their eyes. So it's also something that when it comes to teacher professional development, when you are training special needs teachers, we need to look at all these things, because these can create a very big gap in the educational system. I will also take you to the issue of neuro-inclusive education. Yesterday, one speaker mentioned, and I was very happy. What is neuro-inclusive? Making sure that we design the environment where different ways of learning are expected to, different ways of learning can be taken into consideration. And in a sense that people learn slowly, people learn faster. We don't only look at the physical aspect, but how our teachers are trained to make sure that they support the student. How, if a child is in a school, special ed teacher knows that this child learned differently, but it's not that he's a weak student, but it's the way he learned. They need to understand how the student learned. I will end this, I don't have much time, so I'm going to end this by saying that when support is dependent on individual effort or late intervention, right remain theoretical. When support system or the support system are rigid, then the inclusion becomes invalid. But when we make sure that the support system are very flexible, then the inclusion can also be realistic, as we all want to have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our second panelist is Dr. Selva. He is the president and CEO of Eyemmersive, Inc., which was created to develop VR-based inclusive tourism and AI-driven educational solutions that enhance accessibility for individuals with disabilities and neurodiversity. He is a technologist and an academic with vast experience working across India, Sweden, Italy, the UK, and the USA.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much for the great introduction. And I'm Selvakumar Ramachandran. I'm also an academic at University of Oxford, teaching software engineering and artificial intelligence. I'm a fellow at British Computer Society as well. It's a privilege to be here. Last year I was here as an audience, and here this year I'm as one of the speakers as well. I'm proud to sponsor, I'm proud to be one of the sponsors of this conference. I'm going to talk about three aspects in this presentation. One about my life experience as a person with the disabilities, how I had moved to different countries, how I had received support, and how I have contributed to the society. The second part will be my initiatives on virtual reality to support inclusive and accessible tourism, as well as inclusive edutainment for children with special educational needs. The third part would be I'm developing a multimodal, SEN-friendly, special educational needs-friendly AA model, and I would be doing a soft launch and introducing Eyemmersive Bina to the audience. Yeah, I was born in southern part of India. I was born normal, like normal kid, but when I was 1 year old, I contracted polio. I never walked in my life. Although I'm from backward community and lower income family, my parents always insisted that education is the only leveler for everyone, particularly for people with disabilities. So they had guided me to education path. And in Tamil speaking part of India, we always say that for education, you can even go for begging. So I did well in my school, and I got an admission at one of the reputed engineering institutions in southern part of India. But first time I ever in my life I faced an discrimination that since you are a person with a disability, you cannot walk, you cannot get enrolled into bachelor's degree in engineering. Then we had to fight for 2 months to get enrolled into the engineering education. I did my part with my education, but I was actively contributing into co-curricular, extracurricular activities, and I received a medal for contributing to the extracurricular activities when I graduated. And since I faced the discrimination of not getting admitted to engineering education, I thought, okay, when I becoming older and becoming influential, I should support people with disabilities to get employed, to get higher technical education. So I convinced my boss, Suresh Kamath, and we pitched at, I spoke at European Commission conference in New Delhi to you have to provide technical education for people with disabilities so that they can attain level playing field both economically and knowledge-wise. My boss has given me some money to run a technical institute. Over the period of 3 years, we trained 42 people in programming, COBOL, Visual Basic, J2, Java technologies between 2004 and 2007. Then when I was 27 years old, I was tired within Indian environment. I thought to be more independent, to be more contributing, I should move to Western world. So I got an admission in Sweden, and I landed in Copenhagen without any wheelchair because I hardly used wheelchairs in India. And unlike my bachelor's, I got straight away admitted to Sweden, and Swedish government had provided me a battery-powered wheelchair during my master's. And I write a lot of articles in my language, in my mother tongue, Tamar. And because of my articles, about 150 plus students from lower income background moved to Sweden, and they did their masters in various subjects. So after master, I'm always fascinated about the titles, the doctors. I wanted to increase my credentials. I moved to Italy to do my PhD in information science, specialized in identity management and information security. I received a Google scholarship of 7,000 euros to support my PhD. Then I got married to a British Indian lady. We were blessed with James, and the thing was, James was diagnosed as autistic and heavily learning disabilities person. So all my knowledge and my existing lived experience, I decided, my wife and I both decided to develop software application for supporting education and accessible tourism. Since then, since 2019, we have been developing virtual reality for travel preparation and AI for inclusive education. So I myself, I love to travel a lot. I have traveled 30 plus countries on my own, and I thought, like, I'm getting older, and I cannot travel all the time, always. So I thought virtual reality, particularly 360-degree videos, could be a great alternative parallel tourism for people with disabilities, as well as it can act as a travel preparatory tool for families with neurodivergence. So, and my son particularly, he doesn't like the crowded environment. So wherever I travel, I take my 360-degree camera, put it on the back side of my wheelchair. I just stroll around and bring the video back and put it on a VR headset. I created a London Eye video. He experienced it. Then when we went to London, we had this. He didn't have any meltdown. The collective happiness of the family was great. So this is some of the projects that we have done in Europe to create a wheelchair user perspective and creating Zen-friendly, autism-friendly, and disability-friendly digital twins. And you may go to this link. So this one, it's 40 minutes of Oxford city tour from wheelchair user perspective. Since 2019, I have created 200 plus hours of videos in India, USA, Lithuania, and in most of the Europe. In fact, I had mapped wheelchair user perspective journey from Minneapolis to New York on an Amtrak train, New York to San Francisco on an Amtrak train. So our team would go to different parts of England to demonstrate our VR initiatives. Then, since the development of artificial intelligence, I wanted to introduce, my son plays a lot of games, but I wanted to introduce AI to him. And how do I introduce? That was a challenge, because although there are guardrails on the existing commercial AI, but it requires special Zen-friendly AI models. And also, I want to introduce spirituality through AI for Zen children. But when I look at the commercial models, I'm not so satisfied. So since 2021, I have been developing a multi-model, special education needs friendly AI interactive tool to not just this is not just the chat or chat interaction, but also since it's multimodal, it should create images and friendly, videos of and friendly, and it should be able to provide social stories. For example, within our Eyemmersive Bina, you can create social stories. A neurodivergent person wants to go to an airport. How can we prepare him for that trip? So I'm proud to do this soft launch here in this conference. You may go to Eyemmersive Bina, and it's free for people with parents with neurodivergent or disabilities. And please share your feedback to me. It would be a lot more helpful to develop further this one. And I'm the same QR code for the Eyemmersive Bina. So we have been doing it. We have been doing beta testing with the selected schools in England, and in fact, Professor Levin and his family tested, and they very much appreciated it. But I'm still at the genesis of developing this one. I'm open to co-create specific AI models for neurodivergent children, and also I'm open to contribute in the research. If you are a school or if you are a research organization, please feel free to contact me. I can contribute as a lived experience person, as well as someone who has got decent knowledge in computer science. And also, I am open for joint funding proposals in the US or international. My company is Delaware Corporation, but it is also registered in the state of New York. And I'm open for investment as well. inclusion is always beautiful, and it is both ways. And when we are included, the happiness of being provided and the happiness to provide inclusion makes everyone happier. Wherever I go, I take a picture of my wheelchair alone. This was taken in Oslo, Norway. And I want to I want to send special thanks to Professor Samuel Levin. Last year, he had invited me as an audience, and since then, he has been a friend and mentor. Thank you, Professor Samuel Levin. And I am very active on LinkedIn. You may add me, feel free to add me, and feel free to contact me. And any collaboration within technology for people with a disability, technologies for neurodivergent community or elderly people, I'm here to contribute, support as much as you would do to the world. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And our final panelist is Tamar Schapira. She is the co-founder and CEO of SenseIT, streamlining accessibility testing so teams can deliver accessible digital products with confidence and ease. She serves on the board of the Accessibility Accelerator and contributes to the Purple Vest mission, promoting emergency preparedness and evacuations for people with disabilities and the elderly during emergency times. I turn to you, Tamar.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Professor Levine, for inviting me, and for everyone here listening. When you have 60 seconds or 90 seconds when a siren goes off, you walk diligently and fast to a protected space. When you have 30 seconds, you run safely and make sure you're under cover. When you have 15 seconds, you sprint, and you have to be sure that your protected space is right next to you. But what do you do when you can't run, when you can't walk, and when the sirens scare you for any reason? Good morning. The introduction was very well. I'm going to give you a little bit more about myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SenseIT. We are an AI infrastructure for digital accessibility for the new age of AI, ensuring that governance for accessibility is implemented within software systems. I also sit on the board of the Accessibility Accelerator, a nonprofit that collaborates with Access Israel in everything we do for accessibility and inclusion here in the US. When I was 19, I enlisted in the Israeli army. I served in the Home Front Command, and my task was a non-commissioned officer for evacuation and search and rescue operations globally. I was tasked with global and international collaboration. My main job was to be in touch with the Homeland Security Office in the US back then, and any other organization across the world that was handling civilian evacuation, search and rescue, and protections. I live by a vision and by two mottos. If you will it, it is not a dream, and just do it. I'm a runner, and I'm a mother of 5 who had to deal with sirens and taking my 5 children down the stairs to a protected space. Emergency situations and evacuation, search and rescue live with me on a regular basis. Today I live here just so that I'm here for 2 years. I've relocated, and one of my main goals is to penetrate our Purple Vest mission in the US market. As I said, the Accessibility Accelerator is a nonprofit. We collaborate with Access Israel that created this Purple Vest mission, and today I'm going to speak a little bit about that, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. The main purpose for Purple Vest, or what we've created as a methodology for accessible emergency management, because when you evacuate and when you have search and rescue, the first thing you need to do is create a program that has management, awareness, and preparedness. It's a lot of what I did back then when I was in the military, for the civilian population, but never once did anybody speak about what you do when you have somebody in a building with a wheelchair. And in every drill that we did in hospitals and in every collaboration that we did with international organizations on the ground, never once did anybody mention that if somebody has an issue with sensitivity or if an elderly person is walking with a cane, none of them can be treated in the same way that we prepare and we manage emergencies. This spoke to me in 2003 at the outbreak of the war in Israel, when I recognized that we're preparing the population and we're prepared and we know what to do in a mainstream way. I don't have an issue running, but my children do. So who do you pick up first? The baby, the 5-year-old, or the 7-year-old who's crying and doesn't want to move? So it's not about a pity here, it's more about understanding that there are people that need to move from floor 21 when there's a fire to floor 0, but they can't be moved in the same way. The methodology we've created has 4 main principles: awareness of inclusion. We have to spread the information, that's obvious, so that's what we do in training. We've created a professional task force, and each one of these principles we can discuss. I'm just giving a very brief introduction. And of course, training, which has to do with our volunteers and people that come to be part of this mission. Emergencies cross borders. Disabilities cross borders. This has nothing to do with politics, and this has nothing to do with anything except for saving people's lives. We learn it when we do emergency management for the civilian population. We learn it and we teach it when we do the Purple Vest mission. The mission started in Israel, but it quickly deployed to the Ukraine when the war broke out. Stories of where we've deployed and how we've helped and who we've helped we can discuss, but the point is that the 20,000 somewhat people we've helped are not of a specific kind. It crosses borders, as I said. The idea here is to be able to deploy both a volunteer arm, as well as people that need the help. Those that need help know that there are purple vests on the ground, ready and able to assist you and your needs. And people that are trained go through training on an ongoing basis so that they can be deployed within their country or here within the state, no matter what the disaster is and no matter what the disability is. I think it's obvious, but we like to highlight it, that why preparedness, emergency preparedness, specifically disability and emergency preparedness matter. First of all, across the world, we're 20%. That's more or less the statistic when it comes to people with disabilities. In Israel, we're more than 25% now of the population, whether it's a physical disability or an emotional disability, and whether you can see it or you don't. That speaks, numbers speak all. When you're 1/4, 1 out of 4 people that needs help, you need to figure out what you're gonna do about it. Secondly, of course, inclusivity and equal rights, it crosses everything. You cannot leave a person in a building when the building is on fire on the top floor just because you don't have the means to move them because they're sitting in a wheelchair or at home they're connected to a generator. This is something that we need to come and speak about and find solutions for. And that moves to, the third reason, which is unique challenges. Like I said, we've had situations where we have people who are in bed, can't move, connected to generators, and you've got to find a solution. So some of the solutions are unique to the situation, or many of the solutions are unique to the specific situation. But then how do you scale that? We scale it with volunteers and with preparedness and with plans and with management and equipment that we have in order to handle situations that may be unique at the time, but we've created methodologies that can handle it across the board. I'm not going to go through each one of the challenges just for lack of time, but everything, when we speak of challenges, it's not only the person in the top floor, and I keep bringing that example just so you know. I had a situation last week where I sat with an organization, I was not in an organization, I was just sitting and speaking about what I do, And this person told me that he was just in a conversation with someone who's over 80 years old, lives in a retirement home, and they had an evacuation drill for fire. And they told him that he has nothing to do but to stay. So what do you do in a real situation? And that's just one example of many, because you cannot give, you cannot exempt somebody from an evacuation drill, because now we'll go back to law, because your policy and procedures may not have something implemented specifically for people with disabilities and or the elderly. So I'm going to get back to that point specifically because we're here and this is law, and I have a strong passion for, if you're doing something or you have a procedure and a policy in place for mainstream, we've got to also open it up to others. I'll just touch upon what we do and how it works. Like I said, we have a pool of volunteers, and we also have people with disabilities and or those that feel like they would need help within emergency situations, more than the help that they can receive from fire department and EMS services. And that way we can connect the two. Those that are trained to be volunteers, and they go through training, they have a purple vest, and they can get on site as needed. They're called on. And then people that actually need the help can also find people that are trained. How do they do it? Technology. There's an app in place, and an app that we're enhancing so that people can actually find each other. So technology actually works for the better here. And then, of course, we have purple vests on the ground, just like you can see emergency management, and you can locate them. You can locate people who are ready and out there to help anybody that needs it. The Trained Volunteer Network. Just before I go off with, I close this and we repeat the principle. Policies and procedures, what are we doing now? Right now, the training is available in the US. It's part of the reason that I'm here, other than my day job. I'm also here to penetrate the US market, the corporate world, large organizations, publicly funded and public government organizations, to ensure that Purple Vest is an integral part of what we do when it comes to emergency management, preparedness, and deployment. The policies and procedures that corporations have to abide by must include people with disabilities when it comes to emergency management. It's not something that we can forego, and it's not an aftermath. We can't have an evacuation or a drill and then remember that we have an employee with a disability. It comes into, it kind of taps into the discrimination and things that I do in tech when it comes to Section 508. If anyone here has any idea about it or has researched it, I'd love to speak with you, because I truly believe and want to see that Purple Vest mission is training these organizations and these corporations with how to evacuate for emergency situations, and then you can check off your box. You're complying. But I want to be sure that everybody has that. And of course, our guiding principle, the greater level of preparation, the more effective the response will be. If you go back to how I opened this, when you think about the seconds, seconds save lives in any situation. I specifically gave the example of war, but in fire and in flooding and in anything else, when you're in imminent danger, seconds save lives, and we cannot give up on any lives. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. So before we start the Q&A, I forgot to give the CLE code for this panel. So the start code is B as in boy, V as in Victor, C as in cat, 496. That's BVC 496. And then the end CLE code is Y, T as in Timothy, R as in Robert, 873. That's YTR 873. Okay, so we'd like to open this panel up for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists? Thank you.
Hi, a quick question on the Purple Vest initiative. We've had, I'm with Walmart, we've had some initiatives around vests because we use them as part of our uniforms. And one of the concerns that people have brought up is that they are kind of pointing and making someone stand out because of their disability. How have you addressed that in your Purple Vest initiative?
It's a great question, and it's actually a great issue that we have when it comes in general to accessibility and trying to help. The app, it's private. You sign up for it, and then you can find somebody within the organization that can help you. So, the organization can also say, look, we can't have these vests on the ground precisely because of what you're saying. By the same token, when you have EMS services, you can locate them by what they dress. So somebody who needs the help can locate a person on the ground using the app, and that's how we've that's how we've kind of circumvented the standing out aspect of it. But I can tell you also from not from a high level and legal, and then when you look at it really from policy and procedures, on the ground when you're in an emergency situation, you want the help. So somebody looks for somebody else to, they want them to locate them and they want to find them. So there's theoretical and then there's practical, and the way that we can overcome that is by saying you're protected with the app. Thank you.
So I come from the occupational therapy lens. Like, how are you actually like supporting like neurodivergence or with the purple vests?
I also failed to mention that you don't only evacuate, we also help to evacuate somewhere. So we don't just leave anyone stranded. Sensitivity training. The main aspect of the training is sensitivity training so that somebody knows how to X in a situation.
And then families enroll prior?
Sorry?
Do families enroll prior to this, or do you, if there's a crisis, do you just show up, or are families pre-enrolls?
It's pre-enrolled, but we tend to show up. I can tell you from in Israel, when there's a location, we show up. We show up because we know of it. We generally get some call from the area, from the vicinity, and then we're there. We don't, I want to call it discrimination, but we don't exclude somebody who needs help because they're not signed up. On the contrary, if we come out, if we deploy and we're there for one, we're there for all, families included. So if there's a child that needs the help, everyone will be assisted by somebody who's trained. And we might work together with mainstream EMS services. So, yeah.
So they're not all wheelchair users?
No. The volunteers or
The people you serve?
No, not at all. No, across the board, all disabilities, emotional, physical disabilities. And there was something else I wanted to, and solutions for. If we'll evacuate. We'll come also to help search and rescue, because that's also a big factor. And we have volunteers and also people who have been helped that have incredible stories of why you need to be so sensitive. You can't just throw someone on your back when they're paralyzed or there's neurodivergent children or anyone. We'll find a solution also for the next time without just sticking someone in a protected space, because you don't want that either. There's a lot of creativity that comes to it. So I hope that answers.
Yeah. And do you have like storybooks for families to prepare
Yes.
them? Where do you find those?
You mean personal storybooks or things that we'll bring? We'll provide kits.
So let's say I wanted to have a conversation with my students. Mm-hmm. Do you have storybooks online that I could look at, or?
I have to check that. We have some materials, but let me check that, because what we're doing now is coming out to speak.
Yeah.
But I'll be in touch.
Because that would be cool for even your people who you serve, where they could have an audio or a visual where they can have open dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you about it.
Social stories.
Social stories.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, my question's also for Purple Vest. I'm sorry that we're continuously asking so many questions. My name's Andrea. I'm a disability services counselor at Suffolk Community College right here in Brentwood. My question for you is, does anyone from your organization ever provide training on college campuses for public safety officers?
Yes.
Oh, that's
We're providing
wonderful.
training for everyone.
Okay,
Everyone,
great.
and we encourage the first responders.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you so much. I would love to look into that. We have the flattest terrain out of all 3 of our campuses. We have a lot of wheelchair users on our campus and accessibility, and obviously, heaven forbid, there's a fire, other things. I think it would be a wonderful thing to look into. So, all right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going with one last one, and then I think.
This is for Selva. Selva, I wanted to ask you a question. I just want to tell you why. Very briefly, back in about 2006, my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and we had the local priest from our parish, who was originally from India, come and renew their vows. And as a thank you, we made a donation as a family to his mission of choice. And it was, back at the time, the building of a vocational school in India to help support the vocational education that you described earlier in your presentation. So I felt very connected to that, but I'd like to know how they're doing. How are those schools doing?
Since 2004, the inclusion in education, particularly in South India, has grown up. Like the progressiveness has been immense, and also schools they had the physical infrastructure and the technical education has been a lot better than when I was doing my studies in 2004, 2005. It's a lot better in southern India, but there are some challenges in northern part of India. But things have been upside, like growth. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to our esteemed panelists.